The Central Business District began as the market square in ancient cities. On market days, farmers, merchants, and consumers would gather in the center of the city to exchange, buy, and sell goods. This ancient market is the forerunner for the Central Business District. As cities grew and developed, central business districts became fixed locations where retail and commerce took place. They are typically at or near the oldest part of the city and are often near a major transportation route such as a river, railroad, or highway. Over time, they developed into centers of finance and control for governments and commercial businesses. In the early 1900s, European and American cities had central business districts that featured primarily retail and commercial cores. In the mid-20th century, they expanded to include office space and commercial businesses, while retail took a back seat. To better understand the central business districts of America, we will look at some examples that are close by. During this documentary, we will be looking at central business districts in two different cities in southwestern Ohio. First will be Middletown, Ohio, and second will be Hamilton, Ohio.
Plans to make downtown Middletown more suburban actually began in the late 1950s with an experiment to shut down Central Avenue to vehicle traffic and create the pedestrian Central Plaza. This is a local artist rendition of the new storefronts and buildings along Central Avenue. By the late 1960s, a new direction was taken. This is probably in part too because Middletown received several million in federal dollars. They enclosed the intersection of Central and Broad Street and extended the enclosure 500 feet in each direction to create an indoor climate-controlled mall. This is a rendering of the mall during the planning stage. After I-75 opened in the mid-1960s, expansion eastward of the city accelerated and the downtown central role took a hit. In efforts to renew the downtown, Middletown built an enclosed mall downtown. The main objectives of this enclosed mall was to improve the downtown aesthetics through the use of harmonious materials, to provide shopping that is not affected by the weather, and to improve traffic circulation and parking. They did this by enclosing the two streets downtown to form a climate-controlled mall area. The staging of the mall was drawn out into 5 stages that spanned from 1970 to 1975. The first stage consisted of acquiring over $10 million in aid from the federal government to fund municipal costs. The second stage consisted of acquisition of more than $3.5 million of real estate needed to assemble the land for the new development sites. The third stage was the actual building of the mall, which costed around $6.5 million. And in this stage, they completed the construction of the North Core parking deck and the mall and the North Core pedestrian skyway bridge. Middletown wanted to create a mall that was designed to have an environment that made shoppers feel comfortable. They wanted the mall indoors to eliminate noise and air pollution. Capital investment for air conditioning, heating, and walls and doors was provided by federal funds. By the early 1970s, it appears as the city received federal funds to help with the project. Getting federal funding is not easy and often delays the projects. Had the city been able to fund the mall project on its own, it may have been more successful. This shot comes from another downtown plan from the early 1970s. The gray buildings were existing buildings to be retained. The white buildings were new construction. The upper left became a new YMCA. The bottom right and left became parking lots. So what happened to the mall? In the beginning, the mall was a modest success, but it was not a traditional mall with a single property owner. With the City Center Mall in Middletown, you had more than 14 property owners, all setting their own rental rates. There was no control over who rented to who or what their hours were. The following pictures are pictures of the campus construction. Part of the project involved removing old, deteriorated buildings. This gives you an idea of how the area looked before the mall and before some of the buildings were torn down. In the early 1960s, the city began to study the removal of the roof. It was nearly 10 years before the decision to do so was made. The roof came off, and Central and Broad Streets were reopened to traffic in 2003. With all hopes of the mall to succeed, it did not do so well, to say the least. With a good location in the heart of the city, hopes were high for the mall to do well. The project failed and did not do well at all. Today, the mall stands empty with no sign of business coming anytime soon. Middletown tried building a mall in an area where there simply was not enough people to support steady business. This is a great example of a project that shows that demographics mean everything when it comes to determining the success of a business.
Located 15 miles south of Middletown is the next city we'll be looking at, Hamilton, Ohio. Hamilton, Ohio is one of Ohio's past successful cities. The city was founded on business even from its early days. In the 1800s, it was a main hub for the Indian trade system along the Great Miami River. The city grew from the Great Miami as many industrial companies moved in and expanded eastward. Hamilton became a very large industrial city, employing many factory workers. The Great Miami River continued to supply Hamilton with much success long after the Indian trade was routed through the city. The city was home to many steel foundries, as well as Ford Motor Company and